Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in here to the Bring Me to Life podcast. My name is Selomon. I am joined by the lovely Shannon Shine.
Hello. I'm excited to be here. We had a week off last week. I did Divine Intention, and it was so fun.
Yes, it was awesome. And so today we're talking about some things. It's episode 177, and we have Samhain to talk about. We have witch stuff to talk about, and we have some past life stuff to get into. I'm really excited about this episode. I know you are too, and it's the perfect time for it because as we're recording this, it's around the blue moon Halloween in 2020.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful time we got coming up here. It's crazy that we had a blue moon coming up, and it lands on Halloween right before the election, right before the crazy energy portals that are opening themselves up right now. It's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. It is really intense time, but we're here to help you all through that. We're here to give you all some information about these events. We are both into a lot of Celtic heritage and ancestry, and Samhain is one of the bigger Gaelic holidays or traditions.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, maybe you're like, why are they saying Samhain? But it was Samhain for a lot of people for a long time. And
even
then
me.
We were educated that it was pronounced differently. It's the Gaelic term is actually Samhain instead of Samhain.
It's okay, though. I think what's important is that people are learning about it,
I think that's important, too. Like, there's all this different cultural appropriation and stuff, too. But I feel like as souls and spirits, like, we're going to become one energy at some point. Like, we're a collective consciousness, and the fact that people are wanting to learn and understand, I think, is important. I mean, I guess there's definitely things that should not be done. Like, you shouldn't be like walking on people's heritage, but people that are generally curious and want to learn about these different traditions
in a respectful way.
Yeah. And like Samhain was practiced by different pagans and Wiccans, and there's actually a difference between Wicca and Wiccan, and it gets pretty intense in the words category, but it's also sometimes confused with Halloween, which does have roots in Samhain, but they're not the same thing, supposedly. Samhain is celebrated today by various groups, like I said, including the Wiccans, and it's basically a festival of energy. Halloween is sometimes called Hallows Eve, and it's more celebrated as like a Day of the Dead type celebration, but Samhain is actually a celebration of the light and dark. It's like the same time that we have daylight savings time, and it's a celebration of us having more dark time to be witnessed and to be alive in many areas of the world. And it's like a 2 days festival. Sometimes it's a feast they celebrate because, again, they're like harvesting all this food, and it's probably a time that back before food and everything was as easily come by, like families had a lot because it was really like it was harvest season. They felt like they were really abundant and prosperous. So that's why we also had things, different celebrations and feasts. Probably also why Thanksgiving happened around the time that it did was the different tribes and people had a lot to harvest and share.
It's better when you can do a little potluck and everybody bring a little something and you got a lot of stuff.
And that was a big thing that happened in a lot of different traditions, like pagan traditions and Wiccan traditions and Vikings. Like the Vikings really loved the feastings and the celebrations of the different tide changings and the year changings and the moon cycles. And the feasts were a big deal because in certain communities There were certain types of people. Usually they were usually women, often widows, but there were also many men that would just sort of be outcasted from typical society. Maybe they didn't attend the church, or they had a different way of seeing things, and they would kind of come together in their own celebrations, or they would do more of a solitary celebration of their own. They didn't go to like festivals at the churches and things like that, because though Halloween and Samhain and stuff are mostly not Christian holidays, a lot of different church-related energies would celebrate this time in different ways. So they also had many of their own holidays, and again, we have daylight savings, which became a popular practice too.
Most churches nowadays celebrate Halloween, because I see haunted houses in churches. I see all kinds of stuff happening.
Well, the real big thing that happened with churches is they got afraid because it started being also celebrated as a time of the dead. In a lot of different churches, there's not as much discussion about what happens when you die, because in the theologies, you die and you go to heaven. There's not an afterlife or an opportunity for you to communicate with the dead. So when there were these other souls and spirits and people of different walks of life that were celebrating the dead, it scared the church, because it kind of bucked up against their belief systems and what they would talk about. But in some forms of the Bible, they do talk about possible reincarnation and past lives and things like that. So it's interesting how the church became against it. But I celebrated growing up at a church. They did like a harvest festival, and all of us would dress up, and costumes is like a big celebration in all of these different festivals, and like Samhain, Halloween, Day of the Dead, and just general feasting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such a powerful time, and the fact that so many cultures celebrate it is huge. From some of the kind of research that I've done, and this is something that I really am interested in, like all these Gaelic holidays, Celtic holidays, so interesting. The Celtic kind of viewed Samhain as a new year for them, because it was in the middle of the equinox and the solstice. And so to them, like, they were starting fresh, they were starting new, they were like celebrating who they were, but kind of celebrating the death of the past.
Right.
And moving on into the future.
Well, that's a part of it too, is this is a time of shadow work. Hands up if you've heard the term shadow work a lot in the last week or so, because I've heard the phrase a lot recently, and it's because we're going into this season of darkness, which is also newness to some people, because you get to rebirth and kind of go inward. And this year, I feel like it's going to be super intensified, because we've already been so closed up through 2020, and this darkness season is really going to force people to really face some things and grow and kind of think about what they want, as well as we have the blue moon happening. That's going to intensify a lot of clarity, like the light's going to be shown upon the things that we're working through in our shadow selves. Unfortunately, we got to deal with the election and all of these different things that are going to be shifting the tides for so many people. So it's going to take us through a collective darkness. I know that I think Paradigm Shift did a collective discussion on shadow work, and many people also said that they felt that it was about the collective darkness shifting and transcending into like
or transitioning.
Yeah, into that's I was like trying to combine this transitioning.
You can try.
Into a more clear path. So, just having to like release the fears and also start going back to ways of connecting with the earth. Because, the veil of darkness is super thin right now. And a lot of people believe that the barriers between the physical world and the spiritual world are breaking down at this time.
I think that's in most cultures, and especially with Samhain, they definitely believe that the world and the other world, quote unquote, was, the boundary was the thinnest. And sometimes, they thought their ancestors were coming home to rest, And so a lot of them in this tradition set out food for their ancestors, or even just like a place at the table for their ancestors to come.
That's a big practice in like Day of the Dead and other traditions like that. Like we watched Coco, and that's a really powerful movie that explains like transitioning in a beautiful way. And yeah, I think it's also interesting that a lot of different like witch energy is connected to Samhain, because people start thinking about witch trials and people going through kind of like dark times. Like there's like movies like Hocus Pocus and all the things where the witches get pinned as the bad characters. And I kind of reflected on this, and I have this theory that I listened to a discussion, don't know who it was actually by, but he was talking about the history of witchcraft and how it wasn't actually like outlawed in a lot of places, but what would happen is people would get pinned and blamed for bad things happening to certain people. And a lot of times it would be around this Halloweenish time. And I'm wondering if it was because the veils were thin and people were also like getting afraid of the darkness coming. Like it was also like this fear of the darkness, because a lot of people are scared of the dark and scared of the cold and scared of the that transition into like the winter season. So they would start
people don't like going home and it being dark already.
Yeah, and a lot of wars and stuff would end around winter because the people couldn't fight through winter, so they would go home, and people would come back and they wouldn't necessarily be in their right minds. And since this is a time of the veil being thin, divination is really powerful. So people would start seeing things and having to face these energies that they were afraid of, and they would start blaming other people. And it was easy to blame a witch or blame a medicine man or somebody for somebody's darkness rather than kind of owning up to that themselves, which would then create like a mob effect. Like it's easy to put somebody off and cast them off the island because they think differently. Maybe they don't go to church as frequently, or maybe they believed in herbs versus like the medicine. A lot of times different people would get outcast because they would use herbs and crystals and different practices versus what the church would typically use. And oftentimes the doctor or medicine man of other forms was highly regarded in the church system. So if he would say that a witch or a medicine man was casting spells or trying to wish ill harm onto somebody else in the community, they would get pegged as witches, which I think you recently did some research on the witch trials.
Yeah, the Salem Witch Trials are such a big thing in our society, and it was a huge catalyst for change in the culture in those days. So the Salem Witch Trials happened in the early 1690s. Now, from what I know, you'll probably mention this also, in England it happened before then. But in America, it got probably its worst around this time, when all around the area of Salem, in different towns and stuff, there was just a mass hysteria around magic, around witchcraft. And personally, I feel intuitively that it was a lot to do with religion and fear, and people thinking that something outside of the norm, outside of what they believed was even real, was just magic and evil. And so it's like such a big thing, and it was a huge turning point. From what I read, there were about over 30 people who, in just this area alone, over 30 people who were tried and hung. I think even like close to 100 people were on trial for it. Close to 100 people. That's like, I don't even know how many people were around, but that's a lot of people for those cities.
Well, it was just, if somebody didn't like how somebody else was living their life, they could say that they were being a witch, or like they were even calling men witches. And, they often connect witches to, again, paganism, Wicca or Wiccan, but paganism is basically any person who worships many gods or goddesses other than the perceived Christian God. And pagans are also those who worship earth or nature, or whose religion is just more old-fashioned. And sometimes they don't connect with Christianity and Judaism and things like that. So many people who didn't follow the general church's rules got pinned for as pagans or Wiccans or witches. And Wicca itself has no central authority figure. So what that meant was that the church couldn't control these people because they weren't afraid of them. They believed that the earth could work with them and that they had many gods and goddesses and that it was an energy or a soul or a spirit. Its traditional core beliefs and principles and practices were based on honoring and connecting with nature and ways of the lands, as well as honoring, again, many various gods and goddesses and the wheel of the year and the moons. And many Wiccans and pagans they would proclaim themselves possibly witches for lack of a better term, or maybe they didn't even use that, but they didn't really have a religion. They had a way of life. They didn't claim it to be a religion. And that meant, again, that the church couldn't control them. So it was said that many people got pegged as witches because of disputes and arguments. And it was, again, an easy way for men to claim land. Another reason that witches are so often perceived as women is because, again, it would be like a woman that was widowed or left on her own, and possibly her neighbors didn't like how independent she was as a woman. So the man of the household would call witch and scream witch and blame them. Or if the man of the household liked the woman and his wife found out, she would scream witch to get the widow claimed as a witch. And then the widows would gather together with their daughters or other widows, and they would celebrate these feasts in time of the year because they didn't have the normal families. And that's where witches' sabbats and things started becoming kind of outlawed in the different communities, because they didn't want all these women coming together, because think about how powerful women were even back then, and they weren't allowed to come together in groups. But if you have a bunch of powerful women who don't answer to a church's specific god, that's a lot of power, and the church was afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they were afraid of it. They acted in fear. There's a mass hysteria. Witch phobia seized everybody, and they ended up accusing over 100 people. So 100 people went to trial for it. At least 30 of them were found guilty and executed through various means. At least 19 of them by hanging. And Mooney in the chat says that Rebecca Nurse, one of her ancestors, was also part of it. And according to Wikipedia, this Rebecca Nurse was accused of witchcraft, executed in New England during the trials of 1692. And interestingly enough, she was fully exonerated less than 20 years later. So this is a thing that not a lot of us think about, is that there are ancestors who are still fighting to this day to get the trials reversed of their ancestors for being witches. So it's pretty crazy that Mooney's ancestor is one of those people.
That's pretty crazy. Man, it's wild how many people too are like upset if they're named witches, but there's many people who like honor and wish to like explore that religion because they've been so like searching for something other than Christianity. Like there's this whole theme right now. I know on TikTok people were making fun of each other. They were calling people baby witches because there's this huge wave of beings, not even just women, beings that feel more called to the traditions of Wicca or Wiccans or pagans, or like basically the exploration of spirituality. So I think Wicca is the term that is more modernized right now, and that's what a lot of people are looking into. But I honestly don't like boxes. I don't like titles. I believe in things that feel connected to my soul. And I think one of the reasons that I kind of like explore the idea of witchcraft is because in different practices of Wicca, Wiccans don't have a dominant afterlife belief, but Wicca have been kind of, again, more modernized, and they believe that there is a soul of some kind that can't be just destroyed at this like death. Like there's a transition and there's often reincarnation. There's some arguments in there of whether or not people can be reborn as anything other than human. Some people believe that you can come in as any type of life. Like you've been a whale. Like, you've
Yeah.
connected with whales. I know people who've connected with wolves. I think I was a wolf at some point. I feel very cat-like, as I've mentioned so many times, but that's kind of why I like to explore the idea of the different paths, because I really feel like I've had many different energy forms, and past lives are something that intrigues me so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that we both have some stories with past lives in times like this. So I'd like to give you some space and ask you if there is a past life that comes up for you that kind of resonates with everything we've been talking about on this episode.
Definitely. I feel like there's probably been many different lives where I've been outcast as some sort of witch or medicine being. There's one specifically that kind of comes up that I think about around this time of year all the time, is like, I have this birthmark on my eye, and it always reminds me of a time where my visions and my clairvoyance and audience weren't honored and respected, because that was kind of seen as witchcraft. The ability to talk to an energy that isn't the God that is perceived, again, in typical religions. And I feel like I remember lifetimes where I would share the knowledge that I even share today, and just connecting with spirits. Somebody basically outcast me and they burnt my eye, and I still have that birthmark. And it was something that was one of the first lives that I kind of uncovered. People recently, I've been talking about past lives with a lot of people, because I did the divine intention thing, and I have a soul journey coming up where we're going to dive into past lives. And people often say that they get afraid to explore past lives because their first connection to them is often traumatic. And I have to say that so was mine. Like, the first few lives that I uncovered were traumatic, and that's when I realized that I was connected to these many different lives, because I had fears and pains and aches and memories of instances where it didn't make sense for me to be afraid of it here, like being burnt and being drowned and just being hung. Like, I'm afraid of all those things, and why would I have that fear? It's not like those are any things I really have to worry about on a mass level in this day and age. But I've always been fascinated by the witch trials and the concept of how easy it is to be outcast if you don't believe in a certain thing. And I have such memories of like hiding in the woods and being afraid to just have the belief system I did. And I'm so grateful now that I can just like openly even talk about these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the world is definitely changing, and on a whole, I feel like for the better. I never would have imagined having a community and a podcast with such open-minded and hearted humans who are also on their own spiritual path, which is so beautiful. But I believe that I did a past life regression with Sarah Hall one day, and we went through a few of them, and one of them reminds me a lot of this era, like the late 1600s, early 1700s. And I was living in England at the time, or somewhere like that, like in the UK area. And I was this person who was going around and sharing very similar things to what we are now, about spirituality, about having your own connection, stuff like that. And I was preaching it around, and I was starting to gain a following. I was starting to get noticed by the church, and I'm not sure how long it lasted, but at some point I was warned that if I kept going, I was going to be killed because of this different, kind of spiritual belief system that was directly against what the Catholic Church was trying to do in that time. They were definitely, trying to suppress what I was preaching. And because I was getting a following, they didn't like that. So it got to the point where I got tried, and I was hoping that it would be somewhere where there's a lot of people so that I can make a big impact on everybody before I passed. And I think they knew that. So eventually, like, instead of going to the city I thought we were going to go, or they pretended we were going to go, ended up going to a really small, danky town with hardly anybody there. so that basically I could get tried and executed without anybody around. And that was a huge revelation to me, because it was like, that's probably a reason why it sometimes is a struggle for me to communicate and to express myself, because of what happened in that timeline. And, a lot of us have gone through something like that. And it was a really dark time for our history as humanity, where all this fear was being spread around, phobia against witchcraft, against different belief systems. It was very, very dark. But I really believe now, it's changing a lot. And we're still celebrating the darkness, celebrating the transition of life. And I think that we're headed in the right direction.
It is just, there's something about the collective moving through it. And I think that's why it's kind of neat that there's this wave of people in New Age spirituality. And I know that there's a lot of bickering, and there's a lot of politics, and there's a lot of energy and weirdness in the spiritual community right now. But I think it's beautiful in a lot of ways that people are wanting to like expand and to find their soul. And that's why I felt called to do the soul journey offering. And I know you're doing a channeling offering in the near future. And like, I think this is the time for us to all do this deep dive and to learn more about ourselves and why we do the things we do, and what blocks we're still working through from previous times. A lot of like, I like to think of it kind of like a game, like, a game evolves. There's like newer versions of it, but you get many lives in the game, and you get to like recreate the experience each time. Like, I still, man, like Sims blows my mind every time I think about it. But someone in the chat mentioned something about birthmarks, and that was a tell that you could pin somebody as a witch if you had a birthmark. That's why I mentioned my birthmark earlier, because I saw someone else mention it too, is if you had a birthmark, you were said to be a witch because it could prove that you possibly had a previous life. So if you had a birthmark, if you believed that you could speak to the dead, if you collected herbs and used them in different ways, things like that. But that's why they also said that witches had warts, is if you had a wart or if you had a birthmark, it was like supposed to show that you had the way to like manipulate your body or your energy or something like that.
It's kind of weird how I don't even understand how they come up with all this stuff. It's kind of something that's coming into my mind is the show Outlander, where she like travels in time, but she's really afraid to say something because she knows they will try her as a witch and like kill her.
Yeah, time traveling, man. Like, they couldn't just admit that.
Yeah, so
I mean, that's why we still can't admit time travel. Like, imagine if people were like, yeah, I'm a time traveler. Like, the collective would freak out.
Well, I mean, people are claiming that they are time travelers and
I know,
doing videos on YouTube.
People are telling them they're crazy, and people aren't believing them, and there's like so many different things. I think time traveling is a form of meditation. It's part of this quantum healing thing that so many people are doing.
Well, I believe that our souls are like Merkabas. They're bodies. They're light bodies. They're a light body vehicle that we can use to travel to different dimensions, different levels of consciousness, etc., etc. So, I mean, I feel it's all possible, and I'm grateful that we can say all this stuff, without getting our eyes burned out or something.
Definitely. It's interesting. I mean, people started dressing up as witches too. That's part of the costume thing too. Is don't you think it's interesting that Halloween came from all of this like fear of the darkness, and then all of a sudden like the collective started celebrating Halloween and dressing up as these supernatural beings. Like, this is also said to be a time that you can connect with the Fae and like other beings, like other supernatural beings. So then there's like all these humans that created trick-or-treating and this belief that dressing up as the ghouls and the dark creatures of the night so that they could roam the earth in our souls, like we're wearing costumes of them and honoring them, but yet we're also afraid of them. Like, it's such a weird concept. But
it's so like Halloween Town high.
Right, it's just like we did watch the Halloween Towns recently, but it's just funny because people are afraid of vampires, they're afraid of witches and the possibility of magic and the idea of fairies being real, because then they have to honor the forests and stuff in a different way. Like the to think that we have to honor beings that aren't humans. Like, we already have a hard time respecting animals, but to have this whole other form of beings that we maybe can't see or connect with because maybe they're more powerful than us. But it's just such an interesting concept. But anyway, trick-or-treating came from this belief too that it's again part of the harvest. Kids and families would go from family to family sharing items.
Sharing food.
Sharing food and items and candy and like treats through the communities, and they would often dress up, and then sometimes they would start dressing up like funny or like again to honor their dead ancestors and stuff like that. But
I read that they for Samhain they drew sometimes in the festivals they would dress up in disguise and go and knock on doors, go to door and recite verses or like do something.
Before there was jack-o'-lanterns, there were turnips, and people would carve turnips to look like their ancestors, and the kids would like deliver turnips to the different houses to like honor the ancestors so that they would get to like visit different people. That's such a weird concept to me.
It is.
But then we were like, don't take candy from strangers, kids, but this one day a year kids can go to all the random strangers' house and collect as much candy as they want.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so weird. It's something that a lot of humanity was unconscious about, but I think in this day and age, things are becoming much more conscious. Like, I don't know, but people are still trick-or-treating. Like, they don't give a...
Yeah, it's like middle of a pandemic. We're supposed to be distancing, and people are still trying to figure out how to give each other candy and trick-or-treat. But I do enjoy the dressing up and getting to explore your shadow side, and like, or even just like, not even your shadow side, just your like... your magical side. Like, people start dressing up as witches and things.
You can be whatever kind of character.
Yeah, like fairy, or some people like to dress up as animals, and like maybe they're connecting with their spirit animal or things like that. Like, who knows?
Cat burglar.
Fairies. I was a witch a couple years, as a hippie a couple years. I had a few weird ones as a kid. I was telling you the other day. My mom dressed me up as a stoplight, but maybe she intuitively knew that I was going to be a light to light up people's worlds. So she made me a stoplight.
That is so silly.
And I lit up.
So silly and awesome.
I just crack up every time I think about it. And I also have a terrible fear of clowns and like clown-like dolls. And one year I was Raggedy Ann, and one year I was a clown. So it's weird to me that those are things I'm afraid of. I'm not really sure. I won't say I'm afraid of them. I don't like them. Like, I don't find the idea entertaining or cute.
You don't like creepy clowns?
Right. So I guess maybe it's like imposed in my mind as a collective thing, but like, isn't it weird that those are things I don't like, but my mom put me in them as a child, so I had to like face it super early.
And how do you feel about that now?
I'm still like, what?
Do you think it helped you get stronger or more resilient?
I was a much cuter clown than a lot of things, and Raggedy Ann, I was pretty cute too, but it's still disturbing.
Apparently Mooney was scared of Raggedy Ann.
Dude, me too. Me too.
That's okay. But it's a time. We're going through this. We're all doing the best that we can, and that's all we can do. And this was a very interesting podcast. I still have things to say about Samhain.
Talk about it. You could also talk about it on Friday, because we're doing a full moon sound ceremony, so you can also share some of that knowledge then. Yeah.
We are going to do that. That's going to be really nice. It's going to be, the day before the blue full moon in October 2020, and really excited about it. So The only other things I want to say about Samhain is it just reinforced the fact that it's such a big, powerful time of the year that a lot of people believe that Samhain was the most powerful or like the most important out of all the events on the wheel of the year. And where it came from, I'm not sure, but some people say that it was Samhain is written about in some of the earliest Irish literature, and also in the Neolithic period, which is between 4000 and 2500 BC. In Ireland, they had these passage tombs where during this time of the year the sun sets in perfect alignment. And to build something that aligns with the sun or aligns with the celestial bodies is powerful. Think of the pyramids in Egypt. Like those are aligned with celestial bodies at certain times of the year. And so the fact that back in that time, Neolithic period, really early period of time, like Samhain has been celebrated for a really long time. It's a really powerful year. So let's all just, feel through it, do the best that we can, and, celebrate this opportunity that we've been given with a blue moon.
Yeah. I did remember a couple other things that I learned about it because I did a little research too. The other reason that it's such a powerful time too is because it was part of, again, the nature spirits celebration. It's a big time for fairies, and it was seen that they could more easily come into the world. And when I say fairies, I don't just mean creatures with little wings that fly around, like the energies that connect with the nature world. So like the fae more than the fairies. And the fae to me is like many different forms of energy spirits, like again, like vampires or fairies or goblins or ghouls or all kinds of things. The Day of the Dead, like anything that is dead and creepy or can perceive to be creepy. And it was also perceived that these spirits needed to be appeased to ensure that people were protected and that they had the livestock that they needed to survive through the winter, and that their harvests would be protected, so that they would set out other offerings. And one of the cool things that I thought I read was that people would also bury apples outside along the roads or like the main pathways for wandering spirits. So if a spirit wasn't honored by its family or welcomed or remembered by its family, they would still have offerings for them buried alongside the main roads to help them transition, so that they wouldn't lurk around certain people's properties or anything. Because if you had a spirit lurking back then, they felt like it was a bad omen or it could cause bad crops and stuff. So they would leave gifts along the road. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
They would bury the apple.
They would bury like the apples and things. And apples, me and you once learned that bobbing for apples was a tradition, and you might not want to bob for apples this year because,
not with other people, but by yourself,
COVID.
For sure.
Yeah, but they bobbed for apples, and it was a practice of faith and like allowing yourself to like bless your face in the water to get the apple with your teeth. And if you wanted longer prosperity, I think you would bury it to plant it like a seed. And if you wanted instant prosperity, you would like eat the apple then. So that was a cool tradition around this time.
Nice. I love it. I wish you all a very wonderful Samhain. If you're listening to this around that time, and if not, I just wish you a really wonderful day, wonderful week, a wonderful rest of your life.
Are we doing an energy reading?
Yeah, we are doing an energy reading. So okay. I was just kind of breaking it up and getting into our different segments. So we do have an energy update. Shannon's got a card reading. I'll check in with you about what's going on with the sun, see if there's any solar flares happening recently. And then we'll end with the honoring transitions meditation.
Yep. Also in other news, Reminder, we have a full moon ceremony this Friday at 8 p.m. There's also replays of that until the next moon ceremony available at bringmetolife.com/moon. If you would like to ensure yourself a card reading, a personalized reading by me on that ceremony experience, you can prepay or grab your seat on bringmetolife.com or hit one of us up. Also, check out the other podcasts on the network. There's Incense and Whiskey, Through the Eyes of the Angel, Shamanic Living, Tune In and Find the Others, Golden Gaian, Cinema Scribe, and many more, or a few more at least. Mm-hmm. And I'm also running again a 5-week soul journey. Super excited about it. Just finished up Divine Intention, which was a free ceremony I did. You can still check that out. But I really got to connect with a bunch of people, and I just want to thank you guys if you tuned into that. Again, the 5-week soul journey, I'm super excited. It's going to start on November 2nd, and then there will be kind of a direct instant access for those that join later. But on November 2nd, I'm going to be doing a series of 5 Zoom calls in alignment with the content I've created, which is a little workbook and some videos talking about how I connect with past lives and spirit guides and energy and sacred tools and all of those fun things. I'm calling it Light Up Your Life Soul Journey, and it'll help you get through the darkness to help uncover all of those things I just mentioned and more. And I would love if you could join me for that. So think if your soul would like to explore in that way, and we'll be right back, I think, with our energy reading.
All right. So we are in the early stages of a new solar cycle 25 this year, and it's getting off to a pretty interesting start because most of the month of October, there's been some kind of solar flare. Most of them have been a B class, which is really low, but there's been 2 C class flares, which is a common flare. But at like July, August, September, all those were so quiet. So to see all of this right now happening means that, the activity is picking up for the sun. It's still nothing to write home about, but, the activity is getting going. It's got to warm up a little bit before it gets going to its maximum, which will happen in about, 4 years maybe. So the current wind speed is 497 kilometers per second, which is a little higher than last week, but still pretty low levels happening. There's not much of a geomagnetic storm or anything like that. The next few days, it will also be expected pretty low. So, the sun is just chilling. It's just chilling right now. We have about 17 sunspots on the sun. Well, only one of them is facing Earth. It's region 2778, and it's a beta, which means there is a possibility of solar flares coming out of it. But what's happened recently, it indicates that there's more of a C class chance than anything. There's actually about a 46% chance of a C class flare happening again from that sunspot. So something to keep an eye on, and it's pretty exciting to see that the sun is getting going again. I'm going to pass it over now to Shannon with the card reading.
Thank you. I always enjoy hearing what the sun's up to. And again, on Friday, we'll talk about the moon a little bit more. I'll get out my moonology book and we'll dive into that. Tonight, though, I'm doing a reading. It's from a different deck. I haven't pulled this deck out in a while, but I felt like since we're celebrating the Festival of Night, that maybe I should get one of my not so brightly colored card decks out. This one's actually called Sacred Rebels, and it's got some more witchy-esque type energy to it, and I really love it. And I am going to kind of share a lot of what the book has to say. The author writes really beautifully, and I suggest that maybe you just kind of sit down, meditate, and reflect, unless you want to be in the chat room, and that's fine too. But they do have a little bit of a meditative response to them, and then I think CeeLo's going to end us out with our transition song, so you'll have a little bit of an evening meditation as well. So,
For the episode,
mm-hmm.
it's just a 5-minute meditation.
Oh, okay. So we have a meditation to end us out with. So anyway, the first card I pulled for this evening's collective reading is Inner Trust. It says, though it may be cloaked and hidden within you, there lies a natural magnificence, a vibrancy, a true uniqueness. The harder this is for you to believe, the more growth this oracle is offering you now, because your opportunity for growth lies in letting go of the need to hide yourself from the world, and to let go of any doubt and to wonder about what lies within you. This oracle brings you the message that it's time for you to trust yourself and let the real inner you out from behind the veil. Kind of reflecting on that myself, I'm wondering if that means that it's okay to just allow your soul to shine, allow yourself to explore these different modalities, and you don't have to feel like you're going to be called out as a witch. You're allowed to explore these more natural ways, because the card continues to say you're being assured that you can trust your intuition and you can have your own sense of things, because having an intuition before was sometimes frowned upon, but sometimes what you sense will be love, and you will open your heart and move easily towards the source of that love. But be it in the form of another person, a new career, a path, a project which you deeply care about and want to pursue, or a spiritual and creative practice that you're really excited to explore. Maybe you're excited to go on a soul journey with me. It says sometimes what you sense will be more challenging than this, and it will ask for something different of you. It might be that you sense fear or sabotage lurking within someone's intentions or in the situations around you. This oracle asks you to trust yourself and to find the most authentic and self-loving way to deal with that. Perhaps you need to look inward. Perhaps you have been drawn to this experience or this card because you're unnecessarily holding yourself back out of fear or lack of belief in your ability to support and care for yourself, or in the importance of your need for your self-expression in your current relationships. This oracle of inner trust comes to you with guidance to know, is a reminder that you know what you're doing. You have enough wisdom and intuition to be able to place yourself more fully in the world. It's time to perhaps take steps to unhide yourself. Even if you feel you have no clue about what is happening at a broader level in your life, even if you can't quite see the whole picture of what is taking place within or around you, you still have all the wisdom and intuitive abilities you need to take one step at a time and navigate your way through absolutely anything that life brings to your door. If you have been thinking of taking a leap of faith and doing things differently, whether in your personal life or your creative work, then this is a message that brings trust to you, to follow your instincts and to go for it. This oracle comes at a time when the patterns of your life are shifting and maybe you need guidance. Maybe you just need to take a leap, and you can take advantage of this shift and take that leap into an entirely new level of consciousness and experience. This is not a time for self-doubt or playing small. It is a time to get in touch with that courage, that boldness, that daredevil within yourself, and take that step, or big or small, into the future that is beckoning you forward. You have the wings to fly, and sometimes we don't realize it until we leap over the edge of what we've known and we begin to soar into a new life. So, that's a pretty powerful card. It says that if you feel guided, you can place your hands on your heart and say aloud or think very clearly, I trust in the love of my heart. I'll say that one again for you. I trust in the love of my heart. You can now place your hands on your stomach and say, I trust in my instincts. I trust in my instincts. You can also place them anywhere on your body and say, I trust in the flow of life. I trust myself. I trust in my higher self. I trust in life. And when I don't know, my higher self does know, and I'm guided by the wise voice of my higher self within my heart. Just kind of letting that sink in for a second here. It says, I trust myself and allow myself to begin to be guided in all things. By the wise, instinctive knowing within, I am not afraid to be seen, and I unveil myself from hiding places step by step, and I show myself with all of my unique beauty into the world. I am seen and I am received with love by myself and by others. I am worthy. So I thought that was a pretty powerful card. I did pull another one here. That's okay. This one says, defend to the end the worthwhile. These are beautiful cards. I'll post a picture of them in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook if you'd like to see it, or on our Instagram story. This card says, beneath the illusions, pretty as they may seem, you know what is real. Beneath the lies, sweet though they may sound, you know what is worthwhile. All that is genuinely and truly essential for the heart to throb with life is worthwhile, and anything that dulls it or suffocates its vibrant aliveness must be questioned, challenged, and more than likely cast aside, for the heart is our key to living an authentic life. What is there once that is compromised? Without its foundation of truth, we are to be forever lost in confusion, doubt, and despair. Remember that you are a sacred warrior, a defender of the heart, and you have cried genuine tears of your own grief and also the grief of the world. You have raged at injustice and oppression in your own life and in the world again. You have felt the need to protect the presence of love, for whilst it is exceptionally powerful, it can too easily be smothered under the lies of fear. The sacred warrior must not heed the dangerous voices that say, oh, stop being so sensitive. Stop making such a big deal out of things. But instead, remember that love is the biggest deal that there is, and what else is worth being so sensitive about other than love? The sacred warrior that is vigilant in the presence of love is not chipped away by fear, criticism, doubt, or untruths. And even if others find the unflinching honesty of your feelings difficult to handle, even if those feelings are expressed with gentleness and compassion, and the sacred warrior honors the task of being more faithful to love than to anything else. This includes the fear of loss, and actually it includes the fear of anything at all. This oracle brings guidance to honor even the smallest steps in your path of the sacred warrior. They are no less important than the more noticeable or dramatic actions on the path, and one single misstep can begin a landslide of great devastation. Being vigilant with what is meaningful and what is truthful, even in the smallest and seemingly most insignificant ways, it strengthens the sacred warrior and prevents darkness from gaining a stronghold from the inside. That darkness will be intelligent and sneaky, and it will tell you that it doesn't matter. That this is one time you can forget what was promised to you and what you promised, and that you are just one person and that you can't make a difference in any way, and that is the darkness. That darkness will lure you into sleepy ambivalence and dull your light. And if you allow it to, it'll drain you. But the sacred warrior within you will fight with love and honor and be true to what has a meaning, and never ever allow it to be cast aside. Even if it seems easier in the moment, the sacred warrior continues to find joy and humor in life. To prevent the seriousness of the task from shifting and stifling the heart that just wants to live and be free, it needs to be free, because that joy brings strength to the warrior and an expanded, relaxed awareness that can then sense the presence of fear, whether it's masked as anger, hate, or doubt, and it can then immediately respond to it with a fierce compassion. The sacred warrior will not allow fear to gain a stronghold within the heart, because this oracle has special guidance for you. You're being asked to stay strong and to stand your ground. This might be in a big emotional journey, and it feels like the fight of your life. It may be in a matter that does not seem to hold as much importance, but it's still there. Perhaps, for example, you are contemplating an idea that you feel could be something, but those around you declare that it's nothing. Maybe it seems too much or impractical, too little or too much. However, what is happening or soon will be happening is very much worthwhile. So hold tight and ask yourself for the help through this healing process. Stay true to the sacred warrior of love that you are and defend to the end all that is worthwhile. This oracle card gains even more significance when drawn at a time of high energy, of new birth. Again, you can place your hand on your heart and say, I call upon the sacred warriors of unconditional love. I ask for your support, your protection, your assistance, and your intervention on my behalf through the unconditional love portals of that which is truly worthwhile for the light and the life of the heart, to be protected and preserved within me and in the world for a greater good. And through my own free will, so be it that you guide me through the light. You can repeat that if you wish. You can reflect on that, especially if you're checking the replay. And I think those are some really powerful messages. But I do have one more. This one says, release the dark wound and let love live. And I think because we talked about the dark time, this is a powerful one. It says, if we detach something from its source too soon, trying to force it to become what it is not yet ready or willing to become, we can unintentionally sap it of its strength and kill it. There is a dark wound in the unconscious and consciousness of all humanity, which demands perfection and denies process. If you were thinking of publishers before you've even written the book, if you're comparing your unfinished song idea to the latest best-selling pop release, or if you've decided you are not good enough or worthy enough to succeed before you've even given anything a chance, or even asked for divine help, then this is a dark wound, and it has you in its grasp. You have to let go of this death grip of imperfection and perfectionism. Let yourself and your ideas live. Remember that love is abundant and creative and inspiring. It moves us so much more joyously and creatively than fear. You're being asked to honor the path of your own love and what really inspires you. What feels exciting, joyful, or even different. Because that is what you were to let live. You need to let go and release the dark wounding of false beliefs. There are countless stories of vastly successful artists who very nearly binned the project that was the making of their career because they had a deep despair fostered by their own work and dark nature. They were afraid of success. Because of themselves, they doubted. They doubted themselves. They were uncertain. Was their work any good, they would ask. Maybe it was useless. And they would struggle to believe in the right of their own work to come outward into life, whether it was accepted, revered, or rejected by others or not. They almost just didn't try, but yet they didn't give up. They nearly lost their work to fear, but undoubtedly there have been many times when this has actually happened and the work was not saved or not allowed to live. But then there are many greats that pushed through. So do not let this happen to you. Be a great and instead push through, and whether something is meant to be a commercially oriented venture or a more personal creation for your own therapeutic healing, it still just must be allowed to be, without judgment, without criticism, and even without premature evaluation. It must be allowed to be what it is, and only time, love, patience, and attention will reveal it. If you have received this message, it is important to accept it. Accept that it is time for your wisdom to be showed. Allow grace to guide you. The healing process also says, with your hands on your heart, it's okay to allow yourself to really feel what you wish to express. It says, I now choose of my own free will to release all cellular memories and belief systems based in the dark wound of criticism, judgment, shaming, and fear, so that my creative, loving energy may instead thrive in a nourishing environment, conducive to growth, and through all time and space, through all dimensions of my being. May it be so through unconditional love. I release any dark wound of criticism, judgment, shaming, or fear. And so it is. That is the reading I have for you guys, and I hope you receive it well.
So, Mo to be. Wonderful reading, very powerful. Loved it. Great. Thank you, Shannon, for that. I just got to kind of like shake my energy.
I know that one was
Shake my
like
energy a little bit.
that one just wanted to channel
Shake your
through so
body.
intensely.
Nice. Yes, it's wonderful. So we're gonna do this meditation. It's about 5.5 minutes, so not very long. We'll do it. It's on honoring transitions, and this could be any kind of transition. You know, the transition from the light to the dark, the transition from, you know, if you consider it the new year, from this year to the next, any kind of transition. I want you all to, you know, have your own intention for this, and then we'll come back and say goodbye before we end the episode. Sound good to you?
Sounds good.
All right. Enjoy the meditation. Hey, thank you for tuning in and listening to this meditation. It's going to be a really simple one for transitions, whether that's the transition of a family member, a friend, a pet, somebody that you know or even look up to. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to relax. And let all of your weight sink down into the ground. And notice that feeling of gravity, keeping your body grounded onto the earth. Sometimes it can be really hard when someone or something has been a part of our lives, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Or so it may feel. But the truth is that their love, the things that they left to you, allow them to still exist, but in a different form. Take this moment to honor the transition of the souls, of the lights, of the ones that we love. Honor them and feel that love for them. Be grateful for any lessons, for any experiences, any memories that you have. And then gently begin to return. As we end the meditation, take one last moment of gratitude. And then take a deep inhale, bringing your full awareness and all sensations back into your body. As you exhale, open your eyes, move your body, stretch your toes and your fingers, and welcome back. I send you a lot of love, and may you experience some grace and some peace with any transitions. All my best. Have a wonderful day. And namaste. Just allowing you all to come back from that meditation here before we end the episode. Let Shannon adjust her microphone if she needs to, but I'm just grateful that you're all able to tune in with us today and, learn with us and celebrate with us. It's very special to have you here with us, very intimate. We kind of let ourselves be transparent with who we are in these discussions, so it's nice to feel seen and heard and supported, and grateful to see all of you in the chat room. Go ahead.
We love seeing you guys in the chat room, and we love seeing you guys in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook, where you can also just share your own kind of reflections on our discussions or any other spiritual things or energy readings. I love seeing different energy readings. There was one popped in there about a recent, it was like a solar flare resonance, like the main resonance of the earth went down. There was some information on that.
Schumann resonance.
Yeah, and just like so many other cool things. So check out the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook. Join us in the chat rooms at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays. And yeah, if you want to go on a 5-week soul journey with me and learn about your past life and your spirit guides and all that fun stuff, I got a community group being built for that. Again, we're starting November 2nd, but you'll be able to join part of it after that. And I would love to connect with you and hear about your perception of reality, your soul's journey. Yeah.
So, have anything else on the topic? Any final thoughts?
No, I think it's time.
Okay. It is time now to stay awake.
And shine on always. For many of us, spirituality is just the quest to find essence or true meaning and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important in this life. By becoming mindful of all of it, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things, because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, it's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.